Welcome to toy-polloi. Parental guidance. This video contains scenes of Lego destruction.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi, and today we're going to be looking at restoring this vintage Generation 1 Transformers Soundwave. Now recently, in the last sort of few months, I was sent a very large box of Transformers by Michael Schaefer, and I've been slowly working my way through restoring all of those and trying to get them sort of in a displayable state. And one that a lot of people wanted me to fix up was Soundwave. Now recently you'll have seen that I've already started work on that in a couple of videos, because I actually started by restoring this G1 Ravage, which was in a little bit of a sort of worn state, when we sort of chrome plated his guns and also did some nickel plating on the metal parts of his legs to make him look really quite sort of almost brand new. Actually, it came out really nicely. The nickel plating worked remarkably well. And now we're going to be moving on to getting Soundwave sort of up and running. Now the Soundwave that Michael sent me actually turns out to be in very good condition, and there's not really a lot wrong with him. It's just dirty, so needs a bit of a clean. That's the guy standing up here on the left. But I've also been contacted by Richard, who said that he had another Soundwave and a couple of cassettes that were in much worse condition and also suffered from a lot of the problems that I know people want me to cover, and that is this guy on the right, because Soundwave really has a couple of main issues. One being this cassette door doesn't want to open or close properly, and you can see this one really is a little bit sort of bent and bowed. Actually, you can see how bent and bowed it is when we look inside, so it has a great trouble sort of closing and opening. And then the other thing is that the legs and sort of actually all of his legs become really loose, and he won't stand up properly. So if we just quickly transform this guy, I can show you what I mean. So now if I stand this Soundwave up, he leans forwards a lot, and this is a very common problem with all of these Soundwaves, especially if you start to put his weapons on or put a cassette in his chest, then he will just lean forwards, and there's nothing to sort of stop him falling over. So we're going to try and fix that as well. The first thing though, with all of these toys that I get in, they do need a very good clean. The one that Michael sent me, like all of the other Transformers, it seems to have had a battery leak over it, so it's quite sticky and quite dirty. And this one that Richard has sent, again, has got, you know, years and years worth of grime all over it. So I'm going to give it a good wash. Now this time I'm not going to show you how I wash the figures, because I've covered it so many times in previous videos. Basically hot soapy water and a toothbrush, so I don't have to submerge them. I can use the toothbrush to sort of wash over all of the figures and get them nice and clean. So I'm going to get that done off camera. A good clean, as you can see, has made quite a difference to these. They're already looking a lot better. But now we can start on trying to fix this guy on the left. As you can see, he is really quite floppy. He's leaning forwards. In fact, a lot of the time he just tends to fall over on his own. So let's start with that as the first job. We're going to try and fix his legs. Now the legs on Soundwave are a little bit awkward to get open, just because there's a sticker that goes over the top of one of the screws. If we look on the side here, you can see there's a screw at the bottom, and then the second screw is under this sticker here. So I'm going to try and remove these stickers without damaging them, but I have bought a replacement set because I have a feeling that I'm going to end up causing a fair bit of damage to those, but we'll give it a go anyway. So let's first off try and remove this sticker so that we can access the screw. The stickers used on Transformers are made of plastic, so they don't absorb liquids particularly well, but I'm still going to try and get a little bit of lighter fluid underneath the glue on this. So I'm going to sort of soak the sticker with a fair amount of lighter fluid, hoping that just a little bit of it will get underneath the edge of it. Then I'm going to get a knife and sort of slowly try and prise it up. As I say, this is not particularly easy. They're not stickers that actually sort of want to be removed, but we can give it a go just to see what happens. So let me get a knife here. I'm going to start seeing if I can just sort of prise that under the edge. If we can just get a little bit of it up, then it would help. But I don't think we're going to be particularly lucky. Oh no, it's starting to go. If you can just get a corner of it up, then you should be able to sort of prise the rest of it up. Actually, that is starting to go. Oh, not too bad. I'm amazed. Yeah, only a tiny little bit of damage to the edge of this sticker, which is sort of acceptable, and there we can get inside it. Now again, this sticker actually crosses where the two pieces of plastic sort of hold together, so I'm going to remove the sticker all the way around to the back, we can stick this back on using some Pritt stick or something like that. If we can save the original stickers we will, but if not I do have backups. So there we go, that's that sticker done. I'll do the same on the other side and then we can take these legs apart and see if we can tighten them up. Both stickers have now sort of come away and I can start taking this leg apart. I'll just take the 2 screws out and let's see what's inside. It's not something I've fixed before, so it'll be interesting to see why these have gone so loose. We'll take the lower leg apart first and then we'll also remove the upper leg because both parts seem to have issues. So that's the lower leg. And this side is the one that has the little volume control on it. So we can just take that off. Nothing immediately looks like there is anything loose, so I think we're going to be using some PTFE tape or something like that to stiffen that up. But, yeah, let's just put that to one side. And likewise the upper leg is just held together with 1 screw, so we will remove that as well. And we'll take that apart. Just rotate that around and we'll see what that looks like. I can see how this part of the leg works and it's fairly straightforward. It may just be that tightening up the screw on the side will help that. What happens is this metal peg that's in the sort of main part of the Soundwave's body actually sort of locks in position. You can see there's a groove there that one points vertically and one points horizontally, and it sort of locks in position either way, and it's held together just by that 1 screw sort of pulling those 2 pieces together. You can see here there's actually a fair amount of wear on the 2 sort of edges where those bits rub together, and we could sort of add an extra bit of polystyrene or something like that, or some super glue with a bit of baking powder in it just to sort of thicken that up, but I don't think that will make much difference. Looking at how loose the other leg is, the main problem seems to be in this sort of knee joint, so that's the one we'll fix first. I'm going to actually just screw this one back in place, put it on and tighten up the screw, and then we'll work on the lower leg. And the lower leg is quite interesting just in its simplicity. It really is just a post that goes through this hole here. The only bit that's got sort of an extra spring mechanism is this toe. If I just remove the toe off, you can see on one side there is a hole, and in that is a tiny piece of blue plastic which is actually attached to a spring. So you can see there's a little spring that goes in there like that, and that goes into the hole on the foot, and then on the one side of the leg there's a little groove with a little hole at the top, and that little peg gets pushed into that by the spring and locks the foot in place. It's got a nice neat little mechanism, so as we rotate the foot round it goes into the upright position, and when we move it down sort of flat to the ground you can hear it click in place. And that's that little spring pushing the peg out. So it's a nice little mechanism. I do also want to, sort of while this is apart, might as well fix the chrome on this volume control here. It's worn away on some of the edges, so we'd use a bit of Molotow chrome to re-chrome that. And I'll do the same on the other leg when we get that in pieces. But let's start by trying to tighten up this lower leg. But before I do that, I'm just going to put a little bit of the Molotow chrome pen, this stuff, which I've shown you in many other videos, onto this to make this look lovely and shiny again. So to fix the looseness on this lower leg, I'm going to be using some PTFE tape, which is a plumber's tape. It's a non-permanent way of sort of fixing loose joints. What I've done is I've wrapped a small amount around that post, and that should be enough to sort of just give that extra bit of pressure on this joint and stop it being so sort of easy to rotate. So we can start to put this leg back together, and I'm going to just push this over the hole, and immediately you'll feel that it's much tighter, which is what you want. We've then got to drop in his foot, which again, as I showed you, had that little peg on there, so make sure that that doesn't sort of ping away as you put that foot back in place. We've also got to put the little dial back in. Now normally with re-chroming I tend to try and leave these items for about a week to make sure the chrome sets properly, because you can dull it if you handle it too much. In this instance I'm not doing that, but I'm just sort of handling it with some crocodile clips so that I don't actually sort of put my fingerprints on it too much. We'll put that in place. Now on the top side of this joint, again we might as well put a few more little bits of PTFE tape. So I'm going to get some off this roll. I tend to use tweezers for doing this just because it's nice to try and keep it as flat as you possibly can. So some tweezers. I'm going to then cut a length of it off just with a pair of scissors here. Oops. It's really quite strange stuff. And then I'm going to fold this over so that we can drop it over that point. So I'm going to sort of fold it up again as neat as I possibly can. This is all going to be hidden, so it doesn't really matter too much. I try and do this fairly neatly. Failing horribly today because I've got the camera in the way. Like so. And then we can just drop that over this joint here. Again, all of this is hidden. That's the great thing about Soundwave. Every part of him is hidden. I'll put that side of the leg back on. I'm trying to avoid damaging the stickers too much as well. Just I probably will end up replacing all of them. If I can sort of avoid that, I will. I'll now put those screws in and see how well that holds together. So there's that one leg done, and you can actually now see that it holds in place quite nicely. There's a lot more sort of rigidity to that joint. If we look at the other leg, which is incredibly floppy, it won't even stay in place when you sort of raise it up. This one now holds in place, so I think that is going to work quite nicely. He's already a lot less floppy. I'm going to do exactly the same process to this leg, and we'll see what he looks like then. And there you go, that's both legs done, and that certainly has made a big difference. This Soundwave now actually stands up pretty sort of firmly. He's not going to go anywhere. So that's a nice sort of little fix there. I know there are other ways of fixing this, because the way the original sort of mechanism works is there's a bit of plastic on this blue part of the leg that sort of locks into a little set of latches there and puts the leg into 3 positions. And you can drop a little bit of super glue where that sort of peg is worn away, and that will do it. But sometimes I prefer these non-permanent fixes to sort of getting the figures to stand up straight. And on a figure like this, I think a non-permanent fix is actually going to work better. It does mean that these legs now stand, you know, and stay in every single position, which is something I haven't done for a very long time. Annoyingly, I did manage to sort of damage the stickers a bit. You can see here there's sort of some of the printers come off, so I will be replacing all of those at the end of this fix. But for now, Soundwave does now stand up again, which was the main problem, so I'm glad that is fixed. We can now move on to the next problem, which is this broken cassette deck. And I can see, and sort of I had a little bit more of a closer look, that on this one the cassette deck is incredibly bowed and bent. It's got quite a curve to it on the front, but actually the main sort of mechanism down here is really bowed and bent, and it looks like it's been sort of locked in a bent position for a number of years, so that's going to be quite hard to fix. And on this other one, this one is broken as well. It's harder to see, but you can see at the bottom there is a crack just there. So part of this one is actually snapped. I can see it moving. Again, it's quite bowed, so both have different issues. I'm going to take both of them apart and we'll see if we can actually get this fixed. At the moment, I have no idea. To get into Soundwave, there are just 3 screws to undo. Got one inside the battery compartment and there's one next to each shoulder. I'm going to go carefully with this because I have a feeling there's a spring on this side of the figure that is what makes this mechanism move, or is what's supposed to make this mechanism move. I can see part of the plastic plastic is sort of springing apart there, so that may ping out when we come to undo this. So I'm just going to sort of keep an eye on it so that I know where everything goes. So I'm going to remove the 2 shoulder screws first. Put them in a pot, and then we'll remove this one and just see what happens. But it's this area that I want to really keep an eye on, so that I know where everything goes back. Sometimes these toys sort of spring apart and it's very hard to work out what goes where. So let's just prise this open. Oh, yeah, something's fallen out already. So that's the back of the body. So there are some little clamps here that obviously hold the legs together. That's actually stayed in place. I'm going to leave that where it is. And remove the 2 legs, and this is what fell out, a tiny little piece of metal, which is going to be a spring. I think I can see where that clips in, just down there. Yeah, that's just supposed to sort of clip. I think that is the spring that pushes the door open, so that's what that is. I'm going to put that carefully to one side. Then we have the buttons that go on the front, which don't do anything, but you can see these were originally very nicely chromed and all the chrome was worn off, so I'm going to re-chrome that with some Molotow chrome again, get that looking nice. And here we have, if I take the arms off, just move those carefully to one side, we can see the whole of the mechanism. So yeah, there's a spring, that little V-shaped spring hooks in there, and that's what pushes this door open. And you can see how distorted and bent this one is. If I can take this door out, it's really quite damaged actually. I'm not quite sure what we can do to fix that, but yeah, look how bent and bowed that is. That's supposed to be a flat surface, and these 2 little hinges I guess are supposed to be level, but look at that, that is really bowed and bent. So no wonder the mechanism on this door doesn't work. It's obviously unclipped at some point, and then someone's forced the door back in, and for the last however many years, sort of 20 years, it has been stuck in this position and just bent. Hopefully we can unbend that. I'm going to have a think about what we can do. Then we have the little clip mechanism. This is the bit that pushes down to unlock the door. Again, that's just held in by 1 spring. I reckon if I just pull that out like that, we can take that out. So that there's a little spring that hooks onto a post there. I'm going to put the spring carefully to one side, and that is the eject mechanism. Again, the chrome has worn away on that, so I will re-chrome that while we're doing everything. But I think I'm going to have a think about how I can straighten that. I'll open up the other Soundwave I have, because that looks like it's broken in a different way. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see how these 2 compare. This is the second Soundwave's body, and I've just taken it apart, and annoyingly I've just lost the spring that does the latch mechanism to open the door. As I took it out, it fired off behind me, and behind me is my collection of toys, and it's somewhere in there, so that's a little bit annoying. It means I'm going to have to order a replacement spring. It shouldn't be too hard to find. I've just had a quick look on eBay to see what people are selling, and I can get the same diameter. That's actually the most important thing. It's the diameter of the spring. So this is a compression spring, which means that you put pressure on it to compress it, and it's a 3mm diameter. So I've just ordered some 3mm diameter springs. They don't have any in this length, but if you order a longer one, we can always cut it down. So I've ordered some slightly longer of those, and that will turn up in a few days. It's annoying when you lose a part like that, but luckily you know, I have another one that I can sort of work out what the size of it is. But yeah, as I say, sometimes when you open these toys, things spring out, so you do have to sort of be aware of that. And in this instance, I just didn't notice it, and it shot right across the room, but that's what happens. But anyway, in the meantime, we can carry on and look at this one. So let's try and take this door out, and I can clearly see that it has cracked on this hinge here. You can see that's actually, it's still holding in place, but it has broken. So hopefully we can take this door out without damaging that anymore, because it'd be good to try and fix it without sort of breaking it a bit more. I can see originally when they put this together, the plastic would have had a bit more flex to it, and they wouldn't have had to be so cautious as I am here. But yeah, let's try and get that out. There we go. So there you go, this is the other one. So it does actually have some of the same problems as this first one. It's a little bit bowed, and we've got that break on the corner. So I'm going to have to try and have a think how we can fix that. None of these are easy fixes, unfortunately, because it's the sort of type of plastic. It's a clear plastic, so anything we do will show. We've obviously got to keep all of the inside of this free so that we can put a cassette in it. If I just bring in one of the cassettes, this has to fit inside here, and that's quite a snug fit. You can see there's not a lot of room to do anything. And then this whole mechanism here, again, there's not a lot of room around it. It's going to be awkward. Let me have a think. Right, I think I have a plan for this very bent cassette door. As you can see, this has got really quite a curve on it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat this up just using some freshly boiled water, and that should soften the plastic and hopefully should be soft enough that I can then start to reshape it. But as it's such a long bend, it's going to be quite hard to get it nice and flat. So what I've done is I've actually cut 2 pieces of wood so these are just about the right size to fit inside here. And you can see I've cut a notch out of one of them, so when they're clamped together they form a nice flat sort of panel shape. So what I'm going to do is after I've heated this up in the hot water, I'm going to place these over the top of it, and then I have a G clamp like this, or if you're an American I think they call these C clamps, but in the UK we call these G clamps just because of the shape of them. I am going to clamp that over the top, and then I'm going to tighten it up, because you can see even without sort of heating up the plastic I can tighten it up and it will flatten. It just doesn't want to hold its shape. So if I do this once it's been warmed up, clamp this in place and then leave it for an hour or so, I'm hoping it will have started to sort of straighten out a bit. Once we've got it partially straight, I can then do the last bits by hand, just sort of gently. Again, I'll warm it up and sort of bend it back into its correct shape. Because this one, as you can see, does have the same sort of problem. It's got a slight angle to it on this end. The other end has a nice right angle, but this one, it's been bent slightly. And I think that's because of the spring sort of pushing on this over time, pushing up. So we need to straighten that out as well. But this one, as you can see, does have the crack in it. We can easily repair that, but I want to try it out on this one first, as there's no brakes. So yeah, what I'm going to do, go and boil the kettle. I will drop this into some hot water, and then I'm going to clamp it like this, and we'll just see what happens. That method seems to have worked quite well. As soon as I put this plastic in, it did start to soften, and I could sort of manhandle it into roughly the right shape. But you can see now I've clamped it using my 2 pieces of wood, and I'm just going to leave that for now. I've actually already run it under a cold tap as well to sort of cool the plastic down. So I've heated it up so that we can reshape it, and I've cooled it back down. But I think I'm just going to leave that like that just for now, just to make sure that it does actually sort of stay in the right shape. I also took the opportunity to heat up this one as well and reshape the bottom corner of that. So that's now a lot more level, but it is still broken. So we are going to fix that. And it's actually quite useful, this plastic, because this plastic works incredibly well with plastic weld, which again I've shown you on multiple fixes now on this channel. So we're just going to use a little bit of that. I've got an old paintbrush here. All you do is use capillary action to get it to pull into where the plastic has cracked, and it should sort of melt the 2 surfaces of it, and then it bonds it back together like it's back to being original plastic. You do have to let it dry for about an hour after that. Just make sure everything has evaporated so the plastic is back to normal. So let's get a little bit of plastic weld on this brush. In this instance, because there is quite a crack, I'm going to just drop some all over really, and I'll make sure everything is covered. It evaporates very quickly, so you just sort of push the 2 surfaces together, and luckily this is all going to be hidden on the inside of the toy, so if it looks a little bit messy, not really going to cause too much issue. It's now a few hours later and everything has had time to sort of cool down and dry. This is the one that was cracked, and you can see that the plastic weld has gone off. It's left a little bit of a mark, but as I say, this is all inside, so from the outside you're not going to see it. And that now feels pretty firm. It's certainly going to be strong enough to sort of hold it in place when we open and close the cassette door. On this one, you can see it's still a little bit bowed. It's got a slight curve to it, but considering how bent it was to start with, I'm actually thinking that's not looking too bad at all. I might try and do a sort of second round of sort of rebending that, but considering it had such a curve to it, that is not bad at all. Now I've also been doing some work on sort of looking at why this piece breaks and what the problem is, and it's actually all caused by this, that tiny little sort of L-shaped spring. What happens is when you put this door in place, I'll just slip one of these back in so that you can see how it fits. What happens is this little L-shaped clip, it's got a slight sort of bend on one side, it's got a fairly straight piece and then this sort of curve. That little hooked bit there hooks under a tiny little lip on the right hand side. So we just push that in like so. And then that is what pushes the door open. So when the door is closed, all of that pressure of that spring is pushing on this piece of plastic and bending it. You can see here already, as soon as I put that back in, it's starting to bend it. And I don't think there's going to be any way to stop that, apart from actually just removing the spring. And I did put one of these back together without the spring, and it works perfectly well. Okay, the cassette door doesn't push open, but it does open, because when you push in the release mechanism, that has a little sort of angled piece that pushes the door out to open it. So when I put these back together, I'm not going to bother putting this spring back in, because it's just going to damage the bit that I've spent time trying to fix, and especially on this one where it's already cracked and I've glued it, it's just going to cause it to break again. So for my Soundwaves, this spring is not going to go back in either of them, and it will work just as well as it did without it, really. I don't think you'll notice the fact that it doesn't have a spring release on the mechanism. It's just going to open with gravity. The front of these tape decks are looking a little bit tatty. This one's not too bad. It's got a little bit of the gold trim missing, just a few little bits worn away, so I'm going to leave that one as is. Does need a rub symbol putting on that, but we'll put that on at the end. This one though is missing quite a lot of the gold trim, so I want to try and replicate that in some way. Now I do have a gold Sharpie paint pen which would work, and we'll end up with a sort of nice gold edge, but actually if you look at this one, it's faded quite a lot and it's almost silver, so I'm thinking that we might as well use the Molotow chrome pens and do it in silver, so it's still got that sort of chromy finish. It won't be the same gold as this one, but it should look quite nice. Now applying it to this thin surface though is going to be quite tricky to get it sort of nice and neat, and I've sort of worked out a way that I think should work. So I've got my Molotow chrome pen here. I'm going to give that a good shake, and what I want to do is actually get some of the chrome out of this. So if you just push it onto a piece of paper and let the nib sort of soak up with the chrome, it slowly comes out and you're going to build up a little sort of pool of the paint. So we need some of that. And what I'm going to do is just get a little bit of that on my screwdriver and go along the edge of this and sort of drag the paint along it. And I can do that on both pieces. It gives me quite a lot of control as to how I apply it to this sort of raised surface. You might be able to do this with a paintbrush. I just found this seemed to work quite nicely. So you can see there, I put some silver around the edge of it and it's looking pretty smart. Okay, it's not gold, but it's still nice and shiny. So I'm going to work my way around the whole of this, and we'll make it look sort of half decent. We're now in a position that we can actually start putting Soundwave back together. I have made a couple of minor alterations to it just while I've been sort of tidying up. I've actually removed all of the stickers from the legs because they were in quite a tatty condition once I sort of tried to remove them a bit. So I thought I'm just going to remove them now before we put the figure back together. And likewise, I've removed one of these shoulder stickers as well because it was in a sort of sorry state. Soundwave actually comes with some factory stickers applied, which is what both of these figures had on them. And there is another set of stickers with sort of red lines and red stripes that don't look like they've been applied to either. So when I do come to put the stickers on, I'm going to make one so it looks like it's a factory sort of sticker applied version, and one that's going to have all of the other ones added to it, just so we've got sort of two different variants. I've also made one slight modification to Soundwave because I want to do something else to this figure, and what I've done is I've actually inserted a small part of a Lego brick just where you sort of plug in his weapon on his shoulder. What I've done is I've cut away part of this piece of Lego, which is, it's got one of these sort of Lego sockets on it, so a standard technical Lego pin that clips into it, and I basically cut off the sort of bottom end of that little socket, so one of these pins will clip into it, clips in quite nicely. I've then glued that in place here just using some plastic weld. So from the outside you won't see that at all, but I now know that this Lego piece will clip in, and I'll show you what that's for later on. But in the meantime, let's put this figure back together. We're going to start with the front part of Soundwave. So this is his chest as you would see it from the front, and we're going to take the cassette door and slot that back in. Now this does prove to be a little bit more awkward to get in than you'd imagine. I've been sliding it through from the inside and then sort of twisting it around. That seems to work. You can then sort of clip it down. It's a little bit of give to it. There you go, that's now clipped in place. Then we are going to take the play buttons, which are the ones that sit in the middle part there, and we'll prep that. There are two clips that you see here which are what hold these sort of legs in place. You've got one end piece and you've got one with a sort of bar in the middle with a spring that goes over it, and you have to clip these together. Make sure the little gripping parts are vertical, and we can drop those into the play button. You see the play button sort of holds it all in place. Then we can drop that into there. Then we'll get his legs. Make sure the legs are round the right way. So you've got a left and a right one. The blue bits sort of aim for the outside if we're doing this in robot mode. And we can then drop these pieces in. You can see this is where they clip into those little sort of latches, as I say. I've got a little bit of wood here. I'm just going to prop him up. That should make things easier. We'll do the same on this side. We'll clip that leg in place. Now, as I say, I'm not putting the spring in that opens the door because I think it will just break it again, and it does work perfectly well without that spring in place. So I'm just going to completely forget about that and ignore it. I think it will work just fine. If you do want to put it back in, then be careful because I think it will break whatever fixes that we have done there. We then need the little ejector clip, and for that we have a tiny little spring. And although I've ordered some springs, I was also quite lucky. I actually managed to find the one that have fired out, so I don't actually use the ones I've bought, but you can buy exactly the same sort of size ones. And we slot that in through the hole at the top there. You're basically just sort of going backwards on everything you've done to take it apart. And then we need to hook that little spring just down there, like so. So that's held in place. And we can drop his arms on. Again, make sure these are round the right way. There's a tiny little sort of peg sticking out of the metal piece. That needs to be pointing backwards. Then we can drop those in to there. And then we can just drop his back on, and it should all hopefully clip in place, and we can get the screws back in, which it has. That's all nice and tight. So I'll bring the screws in, we'll screw him together and see how well he works. So this is just a quick test to check that it all works. You can see he now stands up nice and straight, which was a massive problem before. And the other thing we wanted to check, obviously, is whether this ejecting mechanism works on the cassette door. So we can press that. That works really nicely now. But that is without the spring in place. What's happening is when you push down on the ejector button, there is actually a little latch that pushes the door forward. So you don't really need the spring there at all. But you can see that does work properly. Let's try it with a cassette. So I have here a buzzsaw. Let's drop him in, and we can shut that up, and it still works. So I think that is what the fix is for this, is remove the spring. The spring is what's causing the damage to the cassette door and breaking that little piece in the corner. And no matter what you do over time, it will carry on bending that piece of plastic. So just by removing the spring stops that from happening, and you can still eject the cassettes quite normally. So yeah, I think that is the fix for that. I'm going to put the other Soundwave together, see how he works, and then we can apply the stickers and make this one look as good as new. I've now got two Soundwaves sitting side by side, both working really quite nicely, and the last thing to do is to add some replacement stickers. Now these have come from the Toy Hacks website. I've used some of their other ones for Transformers and they're pretty nice. I'm only going to be replacing the ones that are damaged, so I've left on quite a few that aren't. So I've got enough on this sticker sheet to make one just have the factory stickers and one have all of the sort of fully applied stickers. Both of them are missing the rub symbols, and I do actually have some replacement of the rub symbols as well. So I'm going to put one of those on this guy here, and I'm going to use the sort of non-rub version of the Decepticon logo on this one, just so they're easy to spot which is which. I think it should look quite nice when they're done, so let's get these all applied. And here are the finished two Soundwaves. As you can see, they are looking really quite nice. Both of them now stand up properly, which was something that was quite a problem at the start. And both of the cassette decks work as well. Just removing the spring has made quite a big difference to the functionality of them. The little bit that's going to break certainly won't break again. And you can see that the cassette doors do open. They don't spring open, as I say, but that's not really going to be an issue. I'd rather it didn't spring open than it broke again. So I think that's certainly the way to do it. And you can see that the chroming pen that I've put on the front of that actually doesn't look too bad at all. It's certainly not quite the gold colour of that one, but it does the job very nicely. And I think both of these are looking quite smart. This one I've added the extra stickers to, so it's not just the factory stickers. You can see they've got sort of some red banding around the arms and some extra ones on the knees and some other bits around the guns. And this one is just the sort of factory stickers that it would have come with when you got it straight out of the packet. Now, I did show you that I put a little piece of Lego inside the little hole there on the top of Soundwave's shoulder, and I'll show you what that's for now. So I've transformed Soundwave quickly back into his cassette player mode, and the reason for this is because early versions of Soundwave and some of the Japanese issues of him actually came with a pair of headphones that you could plug in, and rather than sort of spending the money to try and buy one of those original sets of headphones or buying another version of Soundwave just to get them, I thought I'd make my own. So I did a quick search on eBay and I found these, which are sort of a retro pair of Walkman style headphones. Even got the nice orange little ear guards there. These cost me all of £3, and I thought, well, that's the ideal way of doing this. So all I've done is I've taken an angle grinder and I've cut off the little phono plug there. I've replaced that with a Lego technical pin, or at least half of a Lego technical pin. Now I have the ability that I can actually just plug that into the socket there on the top of Soundwave, and he's got his very own set of headphones. If I ever do any sort of cosplay or go to a toy fair again, I could put this on my belt and walk around pretending I'm listening to music, but really it's just my Soundwave transformer and a very cheap pair of headphones bought off eBay. I think that really does the job quite nicely. It's a nice little sort of modification. You can't actually see the bit of Lego that's in there, and if I ever wanted to remove it, I could. It's not glued in particularly strongly, it's just a tiny bit of super glue on there, and there you go. I think that makes a nice little addition to this Transformers Generation 1 Soundwave. So that's it for this restoration. I hope you've enjoyed it. I do need to say a massive thank you again to Michael Schaefer, to Richard Fouquet, and also to Brad Hilbert, who very kindly sent me some weapons for my laser beak that is currently sitting inside the Soundwave there. If you've enjoyed this video, then make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the bell to be notified each time I upload a new video. And thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.